It seems that every other question that I'm getting these days is all about armyworms. And if you have them, you know you have them. They're the little worms you usually see all over the hard surfaces of your landscape right next to your lawn. Armyworms can be a big cause for concern for a lot of people, but how concerned should we actually be? Well, I wanted to get straight to the source. I know a lot about a lot of different things in gardening, but I really wanted to talk to someone who I know could give us the full picture of armyworms, what they are, why they're so bad in North Texas this year, and what exactly we can do about them. So please enjoy my little quick discussion with Jeff Raska from the Dallas County A&M Agrilife Extension Office. And without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so explain to people your role and what you do with the extension. I know, but I'm
okay. Well, my name is Jeff Raska. I'm the Dallas County horticulturist assigned to Texas A&M University to support the horticulture program. So I'm horticulture support, county horticulturist. I'm the only one, and my job is basically to do whatever A&M and Agrilife deems program worthy. I'll teach horticulture across the board. Backyard chickens, all the way from backyard chickens all the way to landscaping, houses, farm production, small urban production, fruits, vegetables, pretty much the whole gamut. I'm an urban horticulturist, so I'm generally teach all of it, so across the board. And I also right now, without an agent, I coordinate the whole program. So I've got the Master Gardener program I coordinate, and I also coordinate the 27 projects.
So you're busy.
And it's okay. It's okay. It's good.
Well, Jeff, I wanted to talk to you because I think every other question that I get lately is about armyworms. So can you talk a little bit about what they are and why they are so bad this year?
Okay, I'm going to just give you the real 2-minute tip here on armyworms. This will be very sweet and to the point. Armyworms are an indigenous species to North Mexico and South Texas. Every year they will travel northward as the weather warms in spring, and depending on how quick the weather warms up, really kind of depends on how far they get as far as their feeding patterns. Also, what also really does affect how long and how much damage they do is the summer rains. If we have sustained summer rains, these insects will go 4 generations in a certain area. Because generally what happens is, we usually here in North Central Texas, we have a little bit of a drought. We'll have spring rains, a drought, then a little bit of fall rains coming in, and then fall rains. Yeah. Well, this year we've had this rain after rain after rain. Last year we had another rainy summer. So basically what's happening is the more moisture in the soil, the more worms can pupate in the ground and make more moss and come back out, and they'll lay their eggs everywhere. And we're probably on our second to third generation of armyworms now in our region, in our area. So wet summers are great for plants, are great for our growing produce, but it's not particularly great for armyworms. It makes armyworms happy. It doesn't make us happy. Armyworms are basically easy enough to tell what they are. If you're looking around siding, old decks, different areas, you'll see just lots of little bitty eggs laid in really neat rows. And that's armyworm eggs. That's pretty typical what you do. I've gotten a lot of pictures. I get a lot of pictures sent in, and what that is, it's pretty typical what it is. So right now we're right in the middle of infestation of armyworms. So what's happening is they're feeding, what they're doing is the moths are kind of a mottled brown, not particularly no ornateness to them, except for the fact that if you see a little brown moth and you look at his wings, and the top half of his wings, the front half of his wings are dark brown, and the back half of his wings are clear, opaque, that's an armyworm moth, very appropriately named armyworm moth or armyworms. But that's the moth, and what that little moth is about to do is about to lay 2,000 eggs on your siding of your house, and then it's going to have all those little caterpillars hatch. Those little caterpillars are going to go down into the soil, and they're going to come up and feed lightly. And you can kind of tell, you really have to monitor, because what happens with this is quite simple. By the time you tell you've got them, you've got big swaths of your grass already eaten away if you don't know what you're looking for. So you kind of look. So when you start getting in start coming in April, you'll start looking. And if your grass is green and using fertilizers and everything's going through and you got a nice green lawn, and you start seeing areas of your lawn that look a little bit lighter color, not yellow color necessarily, but lighter color, go to that and look at your grass blades, because what's happening is those baby caterpillars, they can't eat the whole blade yet, but they can scrape the surface of the cells off. So basically they're scraping the green parts off your grasses, and your grasses are becoming a little opaquish. So you can kind of tell early on if you know what you're looking at, and then you start really wanting to treat early on if you can, and
Jeff,
start treating there if you see what it is.
Are there particular turfs that are more attractive to armyworms than others?
Yeah, Bermuda. They love Bermuda grass, and Bermuda is their number one. And of course, Bermuda is our number one grass here, and sungrass. They'll eat any grass. Basically, they like Bermuda first. They'll eat grasses. They'll eat any kind of grass crops also. So we have them in agriculture. We have some issues with them with corn. We have some issues with them with wheat, some of our stock, some of our grass produce, because they'll infest a field basically and run through a field. And but Bermuda's number one that they like, but they'll eat any grass basically, and they'll eat ornamental grasses. They will be sometimes on your vegetable plants, on your fruit trees, on your ornamentals. They don't typically like that. That's not typically their feeding. So if they're on there, don't panic, because they're not going to do a lot of damage to that anyway. They're typically not a heavy cell feeder like a heavy plant cell would be in your shrubs and trees and things. Typically they don't like that. Now they might be there because that's where the eggs might have been laid, because those little moss lay eggs all over the place. Wherever they can get covered, they'll lay underneath the leaves. They'll lay all over your yard. Any place that's protected from the rain, they'll lay. So, under eaves of houses, there are a lot of times where you'll see a lot of little egg clusters coming into it. Very small little eggs, about the size of a pinhead. They're white, but they're laid in neat little rows, but they're laid side by side, neat little rows. So they're just a big cluster of little bitty row of eggs. If you see it, then you're going to start needing to treat. And if you don't see eggs and you're seeing some issues with that, a good way to tell if you've got areas into your lawn that are typically showing some kind of lightning damage, some kind of either tissue loss in the lawn, or you see some lightening of the lawn, and it is in a pattern. These they call armyworms because they feed in a swath pattern. They really do typically line up and feed in a pattern where they're just taking big swaths of your lawn at one time. They can absolutely decimate a lawn, eat all the tissue off a lawn within a few days. If you've got a million of them in there, they're going to go through and they're going to eat your lawn pretty quickly. In the bigger picture, they don't typically kill the lawn. All they're doing is stripping the photosynthetic tissue off. And lawns are since Bermuda's sterlonic, it can rhizonal growth, and it'll recover, and it'll come back. It'll just be eaten up. It'll be very, very, won't be what you want if you want an ornamental lawn. So you can kind of tell. But when you see this happening, when you see areas of your lawn starting to be eaten up, or basically no leaf tissue, take a bucket, take a gallon bucket, fill it with water, put about a couple tablespoons of soap, dishwashing soap in it, go out into the lawn where the damage is to the green tissue. Always when we're doing disease checks, we always want to look at where the damage is next to the clean tissue. That way we can really see the pattern of disease infections or insect infections. So go where that area is, where the actual dying area is, to the green grass area, just inside in the dying area, pour that bucket of water in the ground during the day. And what's going to happen is the worms that are down in the soil they're going to be in the soil during the day, and they're going to feed at night. So it's going to bring them all up, and you'll see them coming up, and you'll see all these armyworms coming up. They do not like soapy water. Soapy water would kill them if you put them in the soap, like other insects. Soapy water can kill insects, but this brings them to the surface. This is the easiest way to tell. Digging, I know we used to say dig up for grubs, and look at the threshold would be 3 grubs per square foot or 5 grubs per square foot. Typically, the threshold here is still 3 armyworms per square foot. So if you're in a 12 by 12 area and you put water in there and you have 3 coming up, you're going to have an issue you need to treat. You need to go ahead and treat. The armyworm is very distinctive in his look. It's typically a mottled brown color to a green with dark stripes along the side. And on this last tail segment, you turn him and look at the tail, he's got 4 spaced dots in a box. So he's got 4 specific black dots in a box shape. And then you look at the head section, you go around to the head portion, and he's got an inverted Y on his head, a little white inverted Y. So it comes down around his eyes. So it comes down around his eyes like this and goes up his head. So that's the inverted Y. That's an armyworm. It's the only characteristic of an armyworm.
So
that's different.
Jeff, are there other worms that people often confuse with armyworms?
Probably cutworms and things like that. This time of the year, all kinds of your cutworms, all kinds of your lopers, your cabbage loper type worms.
Okay.
Sod worms, your bagworms basically could look close. You know, if you break a bag and the bagworms in the trees and they fall down, they kind of look the same. But bagworms, again, don't attack the soil, the sod. This is the only thing that really, this and sod webworms attack the sod themselves.
So what's the best treatment option that's also sustainable?
Well, the best treatment option is basically if your infestation is really, if you look at it and you've got a large area of your lawn eaten up, you're probably best to go ahead and use a seven granule or something like that. Use a granular insecticide. The caterpillars are very easy to kill. They don't have a lot of defenses against insecticides. We use BT on caterpillars. Okay, that's typically what we use on caterpillars. The problem with BT is it's an ingestant, and they eat so fast and they move so fast, and BT doesn't have a good residual on the leaf blade of a grass.
Like 2 days, right? It's only like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it'd be gone. I mean, it's almost gone the second day. So would you kill some with BT? Yeah, I normally would use BT on vegetable type situations at times, things like that, you know, green vegetables and things like that, where it's a longer term application. And I know that the worms are going to try to be there for a long period of time feeding, whereas these sodworms are moving. I mean, these armyworms are moving across the soil. They're not sitting feeding particularly. They'll feed a blade of grass and move on. So you're not going to really hit them with that kind. Sometimes you have to pull the trigger and use some different chemicals. Now, pyrethrins are good ones to use. If you want to use pyrethrins, which would be the Grub-X and different kinds of stuff. Anything for grubs, you can use this, whether you go organic or whether you go synthetic. But this is the one case where BT is probably not going to be as effective as one of the other chemicals would be. So use a granular, which will stay in the soil for a longer period of time. Do not, as with fertilization, do not put this out before rain, because it's just going to wash away. It's not going to stay on the soil. Get it into the soil, water it in with a cycle water, put it down, water 15 minutes, let it dry, water 15 minutes, really get it into the soils, and then it'll work its way and break its way down into the soil.
So I have a question, Jeff. So if there's someone who, you know, even using pyrethrins are too toxic for them, right? Maybe they have bees or they're concerned about the effects of pyrethrin. So other than pyrethrin, what would be the options? Is BT kind of the only option there, but knowing that you're going to have
pretty much the only other options you're going to have. I mean, other things like spinosids and things like that, which are also a bacterium like BT is, it's still toxic. It still can be toxic to bees. The thing about it is you're treating the soil, you're treating the grass. Okay, active bees, active insects don't particularly hover into the grasses, and basically you're going to treat in the evening, just before they come out, and by the time the activity comes the next day, and the worms are going to feed all night on it, the worms are going to be exposed to it all night on it. By the time daylight comes, it's like when we have to use something outside when we're talking about spraying fruit trees or something, when you've got bees and everything active. You know, when the bees are going to sleep at night, they're going to go to sleep, they're going to go to their hives, they're going to go to the ground at night. So you're going to spray late afternoon, basically, is the best time to spray, or best time to use these chemicals. You're really not going to affect. I know I'm as organic as I can be. Okay, I absolutely am as organic as I can be. I'm as safe as I can be. I'm as environmental friendly as you're going to find as a grower, as a horticulturist, because that's what I teach and preach all the time. But certain things, this is your two options. You're either going to use something that's going to kill them right away, or you're going to just let them go through, let them eat your lawn, and let your lawn recover the next season. Those are two options. They typically don't kill the lawn. Not Bermuda. Bermuda is very resilient, and Bermuda is also rhizonal, so it's got all these little rhizomes underneath the ground. They're not eating the rhizomes. They're eating the tissue. They don't eat the roots. They eat just the green tissues. Whereas grubs are different. Their grubs are different because they eat the root systems, and they can be very destructive and kill out. But typically, armyworms won't. Typically, no, not in all cases, but typically, if it was a healthy lawn to begin with, then it doesn't kill the lawn out. You just won't have a lawn that season. I mean, you can go that option.
I think that's so valuable, Jeff. You know, because it's important to understand that I think so many times people see pests and they think that they have to get rid of them, right? And that's such good
Sure,
information
sure.
because, even a super, super healthy garden is going to have some amount of pests, right? I mean, we talked about that
Of
a
course they
lot
are.
in training. And you have to
And they
kind
should.
of understand, like, okay, what's the threshold of tolerance versus what's really going to be damaging, and what can my garden quickly recover from?
Of course, of course. And these are only going to go to September. Generally, when we get our first frosts, it'll kill out the population.
Mm-hmm.
And the first freeze will certainly kill the populations out. So, and the grass will be going dormant anyway. But typically, they don't like cold weather. They'll die back in cold weather. So it is the threshold. Thresholds are everything when we're talking about. The two major keys are identification, know exactly what you're dealing with. That's number one key to any kind of pest control. Yep. Number two is knowing your options there, but knowing what a threshold is. If I'm out, I have a couple holes in a leaf, I don't care. Okay. If it's not affecting anything, this is natural. This is nature. If I don't have the insects that will be feeding on some of my plants, I'm not going to have the birds. I'm not going to have the lizards. I'm not going to have the snakes. I'm not going to have the other insects that feed on those insects. I can't eliminate one part of the food chain just because I got a few holes in leaves. We need to teach this. We need to start understanding we can live with this. You can have a beautiful landscape naturally without any kind of, with a little damage within it, because all nature has damage in it. Every forest has damage. Every woodland has damage. Every natural area has damage in it. That's the way it works. Yeah. Plants recover. Plants expect damage. If plants get damaged, they build even more innate immunities to these things coming on, so less likely that you're going to have a wipeout of some kind of aberrant disease that comes in. The plants will be stronger and tougher with a little beaten up at times and chewed up a little bit. And it doesn't hurt to have a little plant chewed up here and there. I know we want perfection. I know some of us do, but we're going to have to understand, what price do we pay for perfection? The price we're paying for perfection is polluted water, dying soils, polluted airs, loss of species. That's what we're paying for just a little bit of perfection, which is not necessary in the first place. Plant the right plants, live with what's in there, live with everything that's around it, you'll be fine. And armyworms are another thing that, if we get a dry summer next year, you won't have this issue next year. Not like this. Yeah. We just had a summer. That's what's going to trigger it this far north in Texas. And that's what triggered this. This is just the way it works. I mean, this is life. Grass will get eaten. The grass will grow back. Don't change your plan of action, except for, the best time to fertilize lawns anyways in the fall would be a good fall fertilization before they go dormant, so they can absorb all this energy and have this energy stored. Do not stop that. Keep with that practice. Go back into your normal practices. But there's no prophylactic there's no prophylactic remedy for these things, not for armyworms. You don't go spray something assuming you're going to get these. And I don't do prophylactics anyway. Yeah. I don't like prophylactic sprays. Basically pre-emergent herbicides are a different story. That can be more tolerant. Mm-hmm. But prophylactics and spray don't make a lot of sense in the bigger picture, because it's just not a good practice. You don't spray to prevent something. You spray to cure something, and spray is the last option. So spray is not the first option anyway. So why would we go prophylactic when it's not the first option in IPM?
Jeff, I knew I came to the best source to cover this topic. I mean, you talked about how we can identify them, why they're here, their life cycle, the damage that they do. So I really, really appreciate your time. And I'm glad that we got another chance to catch up a little here. Outside of our Master Gardener world. So I really, really appreciate it. And I thank you so much.
Anytime, anything you need, we can do these. These are fun. And I don't mind these little snippets, 2-minute tips that go into it, because this is what we're dealing with. I get it all the time, and we need to get this on our websites. We need to get this out.
Yeah,
and let them know what it is.
I agree. And, I think the reason, I'll tell you why I wanted to get on this is, I did see something on the news, and it was someone that wasn't, it was someone that was just with a landscaping company, and they just grabbed sound bites from them, and they said, okay, just use insecticides if you've got a problem. Well, they didn't explain, it was just like a blanket solution. And I thought, well, there's nuances here, and we really need to understand the why, the how, the what, so everyone has the full picture, because so many gardeners don't get the why behind the advice. And that's really what ties everything together and makes it, so people can understand the full picture. So I so appreciate you, and I hope
That's
we
what
can
Agrilife is.
do.
That's what, absolutely. Anytime you need it, that's what Agrilife is for. That's what our Master Gardener program is for. We are a non-agended education entity. We don't have an agenda here except for save the world, save the earth, and make everybody happy within their landscapes, within the properties, within the food production. So I mean, that's what we want. Less inputs, more output, and I see it all. You're exactly right, Kelly. I'm glad you did this because we're running into this issue where I'm seeing all this information that's bad information out there.
Yeah.
And they don't even know what they're eating necessarily. It's just thank you for doing this. We need to do more of these to get this message out, because this is a message we want to teach. So.
Well, thanks, Jeff, and have a really good day.
All right, you too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.